I'm Riley Chow. I'm joined by Kevin Jacobsen, Charlie Bright, and Matt Noble, and we're going to be breaking down our predictions in the talk series and sketch series races, and also touching on writing and directing for variety series. In Outstanding Talk Series, we pretty much see the same nominees every single year. This year, we're having a bit of a shakeup by the new rules. So normally we have 6 nominees in the category. This year, we're only going to have 5. So one of them is missing. The nominees last year, and I feel like for the last several years, have been John Oliver, Trevor Noah, Stephen Colbert, Samantha Bee, Seth Meyers, James Corden, not Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel. So we all have Jimmy Kimmel falling out. Kevin, why is that?
Just the fact that there are only 5 nominees this year, and I feel like Jimmy Kimmel Live has always been in that 5th to 6th to possibly 7th slot over the past however many years that it's been getting in, especially lately. I don't think, I might have to check the math on it, but I don't think it really gets the same amount of nominations that a lot of these other shows get in the other categories. So I do think it's just a matter of other shows are stronger rather than anything to do with Jimmy in particular.
Yeah, I think last year it got no other nominations. Maybe the year before it also got into technical direction. So yeah, it's been on shaky ground for a while, and I feel like recent controversy with Jimmy Kimmel will be the last straw. Although I do wonder if him boosting the Emmys, if him hosting the Emmys will boost his chances here. Charlie, what are your thoughts on Jimmy Kimmel Live?
I don't know. I kind of agree with Kevin. It's just one of those things that just kind of feels like, we've kind of moved on. Maybe it'll come back at some point, but this year it doesn't really feel like it's gelling with, everything else that's happening right
now. Okay, and Matt, you're predicting the same 5 as me and Kevin, I think. We're just going with all the other guys, including Samantha Bee. Why is Jimmy Kimmel the one for you that is falling out?
I think you guys have sort of given a pretty good explanation of the reasons. I do think a couple of years ago, Jimmy Kimmel was probably one of the top 3 or 4 in the category. I think a couple of years ago, I think he would have got in ahead of Trevor Noah. But I think Trevor Noah's built momentum over the past couple of seasons. And I think particularly he's had just some great moments in his quarantine sort of version of the show as well, and some really good interviews Trevor Noah's been able to do in this time and stuff. So I feel like Trevor Noah is probably the one that I've seen rise the most of all these contenders over the past 2 or 3 seasons, where 3 years ago, I probably wasn't even predicting him to get in here. And now I'm thinking, no, he's a pretty well-established nominee who's doing great work. And yeah, so I think Jimmy Kimmel used to be higher in the mix. I think probably this isn't his year, and with the smaller field, it's sort of like, you sort of, by going to 5 nominees, and you've even got other people who've been nominated in the past, like Bill Maher and Seth Meyers, you have to weigh up and consider. It really means you have to justify why that show's going to get in, right? Like, why this show and not the other 2 or 3? And I think with Jimmy Kimmel, it's hard to find what is that reason that gets him in this year.
But Charlie, it seems like you were actually not able to justify really anybody returning. Since you have 4 of last year's nominees falling out, you only have John Oliver and Trevor Noah returning, and they're being joined by Seth Meyers, as well as Hassan Minhaj and Dez and Miro. How do you say it? Okay, why is there going to be the shakeup in this category that never sees shakeup?
I think that there is a lot of, I think this year, I have a feeling that it'll probably show up more in certain categories than others, but I feel like there's going to be a conscious effort on voters to look at diversity. I'm not saying that's the only reason that these would get in, but I think that'll give them a bit of a leg up that they might not have had in previous years. House of Menage's quarantine episodes have been doing really well. I think Deezus and Miro are. I mean, I absolutely adore that show, but it seems like that show really as the show continues, it feels like it's getting more and more its foot in the door. You look at some of the interviews they've landed. I mean, they're like a standard late night talk show that most prominent people, like same people that would go on the Daily Show, would also seek out. And I think that I just think that kind of charm that they have, and especially with Deezus and Miro, that the organic nature of that program is going to be really, really a very big positive for them, and I think that'll help them break in.
I think I'm more hesitant about them than I thought I would be, just because they weren't able to repeat at the TCA Award nominations.
That's true. That did cause me a bit. That did give me a bit of pause, but I decided to ignore it.
Yeah. Now, I don't really keep up with late night, but who would you say has been really performing well during the quarantine?
John Oliver. John Oliver's been
Trevor Noah also.
I'd say the more traditional. I agree with John Oliver. I agree with Trevor Noah. But I would say of the sort of like more traditional late night formats, like, we're talking Tonight Show, Late Show sort of stuff, I would say James Corden is putting together the most polished and sort of professional operation, which is why I have kept him in my predictions. Like, it looks and feels professional. Like, you see, and look, Colbert's my favorite sort of talk show host. So I love Stephen Colbert, but like, you look at Colbert, Fallon, and Kimmel, and it looks very sort of makeshift. Like, even though I don't even know if they've got the framing like right, but James Corden's got his set up at home. He's got, I think, the way he does the webcam, it looks like he's putting on a prime time, or not prime time, a late night show. So I think on some metrics, I think James Corden's performing the best. But I agree with Trevor Noah and John Oliver in terms of sort of content and commentary and adapting their comedy and interview style to this quarantine world.
And to Deezus and Miro as well, I will say this goes back to the organic nature of everything that they do. It's the way that they just riff back and forth with each other. It actually doing it through a webcam actually hasn't hindered. They're still able to have great conversations with their guests. And I was worried that doing it through webcam would turn it into like an office conference call where everyone's talking over each other and then stopping for like 10 seconds and then start talking all over again. But it's actually worked out really well for them. Plus, you get to see Deezus's amazing shoe collection behind him. It's insane.
And does anybody feel like we're underestimating John Krasinski? Because he really took advantage of the quarantine to put out the show Some Good News, which is now competing in this category.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because that is a show that was kind of made specifically for this time. And it is such a variable. And I've talked on a lot of slugfests about just how, looking at these Emmy predictions, we have to accommodate for what this year has been compared to past Emmy predictions that we've done. And I do think that's a show that could benefit from that, because it's made to give you good news in a time that is nonstop horror. So yeah, absolutely. And, that was such a popular show. And I know so many people who watched that and did not watch, some of these other guys. So
I feel so bad now because I didn't realize that was in this category. I should, revoke my expert sort of privileges or whatever. But I really want to find room for it now because I really think that show could, like, people wanted to watch Some Good News, and I think people are going to want to vote for Some Good News. And it even sort of totally different sort of show. But remember when in this category. Jerry Seinfeld got in for Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and it was just such a left field. Like, you weren't even thinking that show was sort of in the mix. It sort of like seems so different to all the others. And I feel like Good News, Some Good News would fit that sort of bill, where it's sort of like when it gets nominated, it sort of seems really random and left field, but sort of perfect at the same time. So, it's so annoying there's only 5 slots, because I really want to try to squeeze that into my predictions before the nomination announcement. I'll have to do some thinking.
I'm surprised that so many people are predicting Seth Meyers over James Corden, because James Corden is nominated year after year, even though he doesn't get as many nominations as John Oliver, and nobody does in terms of just the shows on their own. The Late Late Show franchise always gets more nominations than any other show because they submit across so many program categories. They usually have something on Snapchat, or they've got their Apple Carpool Karaoke series, or this year they're submitting Home Fest. They also have a separate series where it's the Late Late Show, but it's being hosted by other people. So I guess even if he is not recognized in the main talk series category, he'll still get plenty of other nominations.
Oh, he's going to win 2 more Emmys this year. We just don't know which ones.
Yeah. I mean, he won per Carpool Karaoke last year over Homecoming, the Beyonce film. I mean, obviously there was a big deal about that. And many of us maybe were predicting Carpool Karaoke in that category just because of how successful he's been overall. But still, I mean, that just speaks to the strength of his popularity. And I mean, I sort of get the desire to get Seth Meyers into that top 5. I mean, it's a show that keeps getting into writing, which feels like it's always kind of on the cusp, but the fact that it still hasn't broken in after all this time, I'm just not going to predict it until it happens.
We should move on, but Charlie, can you make more of a case for Patriot Act? Because that's a show that I predicted last year, and I feel like I don't want to be burned again.
Yeah, I kind of feel, I think I predicted it last year as well. I kind of feel like, again, I think voters hopefully having diversity on their mind will give that a leg up. The show's been, of course, very well received for several years now. And I think that, the episodes he's done since the outbreak have happened have actually, because they're so timely and they've touched on specifically on all these different things, very much in the way that John Oliver has. It seems almost ludicrous that you would nominate John Oliver, but he wouldn't nominate Hassan Minhaj, because it's very much the same thing. They're both very good at it. So it is kind of a hopeful thing, but it's one that I do actually seriously believe it will happen. I hope.
All right, let's finally jump over to Sketch Series. Now, Sketch Series actually only has 14 submissions, so we don't really know how many slots there are going to be for nominations. The Academy says that they're going to invoke a sliding scale between 0 and 19 submissions, whatever the hell that means. But this category has hosted 6 nominees the last 3 years, so I could see them saying, let's max out at 4 in this case, which is the recommendation that I gave Chris, and that's why we have that many in the prediction center. So leading our odds are Saturday Night Live, A Black Lady Sketch Show, Drunk History, and At Home with Amy Sedaris. Charlie, you, of course, are deviating from that. You have Sherman Showcase instead. What's the case there?
Well, Sherman Showcase, I think, is such a unique piece that I actually think it actually could fill that void that Documentary Now would usually do. And it's very much in the same sort of vein. It takes this idea of this variety show in the vein of like Soul Train and Midnight Special, and selling a best of DVD collection, and each episode just highlights various best of clips of this supposed fake show. It's quite amazing, and you also look at what goes into making that show, the sets, the actors, the music, the original songs on it are ridiculous. It's insane. I really think that could break through. I'm actually really considering taking out At Home with Amy Sedaris and putting in Black Lady Sketch Show, though, as well.
And what are the considerations with those two for you?
Wait, what's that?
I said, what are you considering when it comes to At Home versus a Black Lady Sketch Show?
Again, I think the diversity push is going to be. I think it's basically guessing what I think will be on voters' minds and what will help and what might give them a leg up. Now, though, At Home with Amy Sedaris does have the advantage of having been nominated the past 2 years, right? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it's been the past 2 years, and so it's definitely it's so tough with just these 14. And really, I think the only two that are really safe bets are Saturday Night Live and Drunk History. They just seem like the most, especially because Drunk History also gets nominated in other categories, and it's won in other categories. It won a costume design Emmy a couple of years ago, and that's something that I also think will help Sherman showcase because it has these technical aspects that I think those tech branches will really respond to. The costumes, the music, and all sorts of other aspects of the show.
So Matt, you're switching it up. You have Alternatino with Arturo Castro. That show is on Comedy Central for its eligible season. I believe it's moving to Quibi for its second season that has been ordered. What's the case for that one?
I think it's just like it's as Joel said, like we've got 14 shows, we've got 4 slots. There are 2 safe shows. I agree that it's Saturday Night Live and Drunk History are 2 safe shows in this category. And I think they're the only 2 shows they've been nominated every season that this category's existed, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Probably.
I mean, At Home at Amy Sedaris has technically been nominated for all of those seasons, but it's been a
She hasn't been.
Show.
That show's not as old as the category, right?
No, no, I know. I'm just saying it's gotten it every year, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it's fair. But so I think they're the 2 sort of like your 2 sort of staples in this category. Outside of that, it's sort of a bit of a spin the wheel because there's so like much, and I don't mean just in terms of race issues, but there's so much diversity in types of programs you have in this category, and so many. So diversity in so many different ways, it's hard to know where they're going to land. I think for Arturo's show, it's just he's got a compelling story. I think it's a good show. I think it's just sort of it's so hard because people have in some ways you're voting for the show, you're also voting for the person because there's so many of these shows have whether it's Amy Sedaris or Castro or whoever it is. There's someone at the center of it, and it's just hard to know who voters are going to land on. And he's the one I'm with at the moment, but we've got, a couple of weeks till nominations come out, a month till, I don't know. Like, I'm sure my predictions in this category will be sort of like rotating at various times. But at the moment, I've got with him.
And Kevin, you, of course, are going conservative here. Are you just incapable of having an original thought, or you're hoping to win the predictions contest? What's going on here?
Both, actually, yes. I just feel extremely confident in these 4, and I could see Sherman Showcase, I could see Alternatino, but I really just feel like, obviously SNL and Drunk History are in. I think the fact that, again, Amy Sedaris has gotten in every year since season 1, plus they also got a production design nomination last year, proves that it's not just a fluke, that it's just getting in for no other reason, that they can't find other shows. And then for Black Lady Sketch Show, it's HBO, and it's very much in the same vein as Key and Peele and Portlandia and Inside Amy Schumer, where it just has this unique voice and perspective, and the fact that it is so relevant, and you have Robin Thede at the center of that, I just feel like all of the signs point to that at the moment.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Great.
Is there anybody that we should be keeping an eye on in this category? Anybody?
I don't know if this has any logic to it, but I think the name recognition of Whose Line Is It Anyway has a slight possibility of just happening randomly. I mean, that's a show that has had a few iterations now. Way back in the day, Wayne Brady won an Emmy for individual performance for that.
Over Robin Williams for Live on Broadway, which I will never forgive him for.
Fair, but still, it is on the radar in some respect. So it's also, I think it's the last show on the one page of the ballot of sketch series. So, I mean, who knows? Anything could happen.
And if we're going by name recognition, you do have Tiffany Haddish presents in there. So, she's already an Emmy winner. So, that just on name recognition alone, that could get in.
It'd be fun if we just ended up with 2 nominees in this category.
Saturday Night Live versus Drunk History.
I would bet on Drunk History
every year. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
At what point do we just combine the two again if there's not enough sketch shows?
It's actually if there are 13 2 years in a row. So this year there are 14, so they just missed. They're not quite on probation yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is interesting because like some of the staples that we've had in this category, like Portlandia, which ended a couple of years ago, Documentary Now, which wasn't in this year, like it just absent. So, it is interesting that we've seen a real I think a few years ago when you had Portlandia and Key and Peele and Inside Amy Schumer, they were just it was so packed, and there were all these contenders for win, and we're seeing sort of the new class of sketch shows coming through now, which is really nice because they're not necessarily any worse as sketch shows, but just from less established voices and less established people, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah, and they were beating SNL too.
Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to touch on the writing and directing categories, since those variably are presented in the main telecast. Writing turned out not to be as interesting as I thought it was going to be for doing research. I noticed that John Oliver, SNL, Seth Meyers, Samantha Bee, and Stephen Colbert have all been nominated the last 3 years. So I don't see why that wouldn't just happen again. Kevin, did you...
You know me, I'm going conservative. I'm thinking it's just going to be the same thing with a slight possibility of maybe The Daily Show possibly breaking in, but maybe Amy Sedaris. I don't know. Yep. Don't have a lot to add there.
I would love to see Drunk History get into the directing category.
And it has before.
Yeah.
It has, that's right.
A couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Drunk History is actually going to get 2 slots this year in the directing category. Just because, all these other shows, all these other sketch shows that have contended previously are gone. And the way the directing category works is it's based on how many sketch shows versus how many talk shows submit. So they're roughly even this year. I think it was 15-16, which means that 2 slots are guaranteed for sketch, 2 slots are guaranteed for talk, and then the last slot is just a free-for-all. So I've got SNL, 2 Drunk History, and then also Stephen Colbert and John Oliver. Those seem to be the safest bets over the years.
What impact do we think that quarantine might have on some of these late night shows? I wonder particularly sort of in terms of directing. Now, big chunk of the season did not happen in COVID times. We're talking about sort of since halfway through last year, but what's very fresh in people's minds are these sort of at-home talk shows, people getting their iPads or whatever. I think they've got professional camera equipment now and they're setting it up themselves in their rooms and stuff like that. Are people going to be more impressed with the directorial achievement of that, or will it seem less impressive?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I don't know. I'm not really considering that, but I absolutely should be.
I don't know. On the directing ballot, do they submit specific episodes on that directing ballot?
They do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a very hard time believing that thinking that a lot of these shows, at least in the directing category, would submit one of the quarantine quarantine episodes. I just have a very hard time seeing that.
Yeah, but like I just get like, yeah, I guess you're right. There is just a part of me that I think we always talk about like how much do the tapes and the submissions matter, and there's a part of me that with the variety categories, I feel like even more is just what people have in their minds currently about that show, more so than that episode of Colbert was good 8 months ago. Like,
well, I mean, it hasn't hurt Saturday Night Live in the past, and I think they'll probably just win this one again.
Yeah.
Well,
they have the Eddie Murphy one, which is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're also like doing live directing of like, it's like Saturday Night Live lost this category because of a bad submission. Like, is it just like the more directory show?
I think it's just the fact. I think it's just the logistics of what's involved in making the show. And they do it well.
Yeah. No, I agree.